Hi, this is Rachel. How y'all doing? This is a third video for a question regarding P-3, which I don't know if you want me to say your name, so I'll just do it like that for a while. Who had asked me, is there anything kind of bad about the faith that I might want to know about beforehand? So I'm going to try to go over a different sort of set of things as far as what is presented and then what my experiences were and things for you to peruse and see, what might be troublesome for you, might not be for me. And I did talk about that in my second one where I was describing that there were certain pertinent things to my husband that were just, burn his britches, and to me, they didn't serve as anything that thwarted me away. From the outset that I would say there is not a grand scheme of hiding anything, okay, as far as anything that you can find which is written material, authorized or unauthorized. It's all quite available and easy to acquire. You don't even have to spend a penny, especially if you've got the internet available to you. You've got entire texts that are translated, and of course, if you speak Farsi or Arabic or have a friend who's Persian and can help you, really you've got a great resource there as well. The only thing which is not yet available are that which isn't translated, or like there's pieces of tablets I think that are not yet revealed, but more there are laws that have not yet been enjoined, okay, or that some that are only for Persians, so kind of got to be a bigger deal for me as I was going along during my Baha'i journey, because there wasn't really hakukullah when I had first started, or it was only for Persians, I pretty much think, but now there's a whole education on it, and I even went to a conference once where we studied hakukullah very, very strongly. We weren't doing the repetitions of the allow pause on rosary or without rosary, and I always counted them on my fingers by counting the knuckles, okay, and uh, I made beads, which of course you're allowed to do. Now I have beads and I know what to do with them. So originally when I first came up onto it, it was, you read morning and night, and then you have your obligatory. And your obligatory, there's 3 different ways to say it, and so there's 3 different ways you can do it. There's a long and a short, one within 24 hours if you want, or if you do the medium one, then you're doing ablutions 3 times a day, and you're doing a whole other different set. I either did long or short. I rarely, if ever did medium. Short is easy, and I probably still could say it now. Everyone is, oh my God, that's great to know the worship. I testified this morning to my problems until I might to the elders, now the God be held in perilous hospitals. But yeah, I can still say it because I did it for how long? The long one, I know parts of it. I would interject Hebrew in it. Sorry. So, I don't think there's anything bad about saying prayers at prescribed times or washing beforehand, which, in the Akdas it does talk about the washing of the feet as well, but that's not enjoined yet, so don't even have to worry about that. Some people might think it's bad to not be able to drink, or, have to get permission to get married from their parents, written, permission. I mean, I don't know what you would consider bad. I think probably more what you're trying to find out is there anything lurking? I mean, obviously there's nothing like that goes on at feasts that's not seemly. I mean, really, the only reason that it's closed to non-believers is because of the topics that are discussed, which are private to the community. But everyone is invited within the community to share freely, and it's because of that privacy is kept. There are also just logistical issues and financial issues, just whatever those are. And I'm not telling you anything that you couldn't find out by reading what is discussed, but obviously all those details are kept private to encourage people to feel comfortable to, you know, truly have that exchange during a feast. So there's nothing like secret bad going on. The only things that I don't know what you might come across. I mean, I had my own different difficulties as far as, you know, what I read in the faith and what I saw people doing, which there's always going to be people not exactly mature in their capability to express whatever faith they believe in. I don't care what faith it is. You're always going to come across that. A person has an ideal, they pray towards being able to express it, and whether or not that's what comes across to the other person, you know, may or may not happen. There were things that I could say personally got on my nerves, I guess you could say. There are certain things about Baha'i culture that I absolutely love. And then there are certain things about Baha'i culture and teachings that didn't sit well with me. Otherwise, I would have remained a Baha'i, obviously. One of them had to do with rituals, as they're so described. And probably because I grew up in a faith that had a ton of rituals, shifting the idea to the ritual of prayer, I'm not saying it was an uncomfortable thing, because I do love to pray and meditate, and I wish I had grab it for you now. My prayer book is so torn up because of the way I used it all the time. And I'm not trying to brag. I'm just saying I only had a paperback, so of course it's going to get torn up. That all of the things that I was accustomed to, having it shift from a daily and a weekly schedule to this 19-day business, never settled with me. And having feast be completely different each time, you know, it sounds charming at first, and it's great because obviously you can make it any way you want, and pulling the quotes together, and that, you know, there's a lot of creativity from lots of different people in the feast, in the community, to bring the feast together and stuff, and that there's really only one structure about, you know, 3 portions of it. For me, it lacked. Now, it didn't always. I mean, it used to be when I would hear, you know, any of the Baha'i writings, that I would get a real great sense of happiness and fullness, and, you know, that changed. Otherwise I would have stayed. But having grown up in a way where there was, and I don't even like to use the word ritual, but there were a lot of physical actions that accompanied prayers, and that prayer were done in community. That for me was lacking, because the only one that's said together and in the company is the one that's for death. And that actually is one of the things that bothered me, the way that Baha'is approach death. I'm used to a very systematic expression of, you know, from washing the body to caring for the body, this whole thing. And yes, you know, they wrap and they put the ring on, and this business too. Somehow, the way in which it's approached to me felt, I don't want to say disingenuous, but inhuman. And what I mean by that is, if you read the quote, it's rejoice. Well, I've made death a messenger for thee. Wherefore dost thou grieve? You know, and I even wrote a song for it that was performed at, yeah, 2 different. Anyways, point of the story is, to me, that's not human. That there is an absolute part of grief that's important, and that to shift the gear or be expected to seems inhuman. Okay, so that's part of one of them. Another part of them was the lack of clergy and the distrust, just the patent distrust, to me seems completely wrong for what a Baha'i is or claims to be, because if you have no prejudice or bigotry or, you know, opinion of anything, then why would you immediately and only distrust the clergy of every other faith and say, oh, well, they must have gotten it wrong, or, well, you know, that they got corrupt after this or that, and then that's why the next messenger had to come. It's like, that's a patent distrust. That seems to me completely not Baha'i. And I'm sure that Baha'is would say, no, 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 that's not what it was. Well, that was the other problem for me with the faith. And my husband titled it, What I Really Meant Was. And here's what that means. Let's say there's a family, okay? They've for generations been whatever faith, and they happen to be living at the time when any one of the messengers had came. Is it then God's intention that these people will follow this new messenger and somehow be able to completely shift gears? That seems very implausible to me. As far as what progressive revelation says. The last part about that does have to do with progressive revelation. And here where I'm going to lay down the gauntlet. When I learned who prophets were as a Jew being raised, there is such a high caliber that obviously if their prophecy doesn't come true, you stone them to death, right? But if there is even a perceived impropriety, right, that's not considered to be favorable. If you can call them into question, which, yes, look at David, look at Moses, look at all these, they were called into question, and some of them obviously before and after, depending upon what was going on, and then did they repent. There were certain things from certain believed to be prophets that I felt were so, even if they weren't true, were so improprietous that to even have the appearance of was so distasteful, especially when it was in the writings and proved in other ways that people interpret differently and don't believe, that was one of the bigger breaking points for me. And it came so hard and so fast that I could no longer stay in the faith for the 4 more months that I had thought I had wanted to pray and meditate about it. It was that distasteful. Those references I think I'm probably going to put into the bar, in the info box bar, so that you can peruse those if you would like. And I hope that starts to answer. And if it just makes more questions, just send me an email and I'll answer whatever I can. But remember, I'm always just speaking from my experience. I'm not any authority, and I don't have anything against any Baha'is. I'm really grateful to have the chance to talk with you about it, and I hope your search is fruitful. So, peace to you.